Alright, so this is Introduction to Blender, Part 1. First thing you see when you open Blender will be something that looks quite like this. Okay, so the first thing about Blender is that you have to right-click to select things. So right-clicking the camera, right-clicking the box, right-clicking the light, and if I left-click, I'll move this cursor around. So I will go into more about all that stuff later. But never mind about the cursor. Usually it will be at the center of the space when you open it up. However, so the first thing we want to do is learn how to navigate. To do that, by default, for some reason, in Blender, it's not really quite set up good for that. So go to File, User Preferences, and here under Input you will see Emulate 3-button mouse, and so you want to make sure that that is turned on. It will be off by default. Make sure it's turned on, then go down here and Save User Settings. That saves a preference file, then close this dialog. Alright, so now once that's done, now you can Alt left click and start to navigate just like Maya, Lightwave, and a few other apps that you can configure this way. Alright, so that's the simple navigation part. It gets more complicated, but not really. It's very similar to other apps. If you want to zoom in, you can use the mouse button to zoom in, the wheel mouse wheel. If you want to track, you can use Shift and Alt together and track left and right and up and down. So it's kind of just moving things around on this plane like that. If you use Control Alt, you can, that's another way to zoom in with a little finer control. It's like that. It's similar to the mouse, which is kind of almost like a tracking rather than zooming. But this is more like a zoom, but it's very smooth, and you can zoom in and zoom out like that. So a real quick recap is we went to File, User Preferences, we used Emulate 3-button mouse, made sure that was on, saved user settings, closed the dialog, and now we can navigate like Lightwave. It's very similar to Lightwave, has a very similar amount of number of keyboard shortcuts. It just works a little bit differently. Maya is slightly different, but it also uses the Alt and left mouse button for navigating. And a lot of other programs use that same Alt left mouse button. Even some game engines use that. I think Unity has that as well. Alright, so now that's that. The very next thing I like to do is talk about one other preference I like to turn on. And that is, go back again to File, User Preferences, and go over here to Editing, and about 3/4 of the way over, down below Themes, but we're in the Editing, you'll find down here Transform Release Confirms. Again, this is one of these that's off by default, and I don't like it, so I turn it on. So there you go. So now if you have done this, save user settings, if you've done this, then we're basically on the same page for following my keyboard shortcuts and being able to do what I do, and then in the next video I'll talk about more features. Alright?